So that's the more like a game plan, so I always follow. So here is the online view here, right? Now we're going to work on the main category. Okay. So remember, I said before, the first stage is to publish our catalog. So we're going to create an online catalog, product catalog. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create a table, right? This table will contain categories in multiple levels. In our case, or in your project case, let's keep it just now for 2 levels, okay? But in fact, most of the time you have 3 levels and sometimes 4 levels. But it is always advised that you don't want to have too deep kind of level, and that will get you, potential buyers or customer confused, right? So maybe 3 categories, 3 levels are good enough. If you have more than that, boy, unless your customer is really an expert. So we're gonna do 2 levels, all right? Now, how do we design this online store category data table? Okay. Now, we all learned, relational database, okay? That's, the basic, way that we develop today, database. So when you do relational database, okay, or data model, you need to do something called normalization, right? So if you go this route, you're gonna have 2 tables for your category database. Or for your category, there are 2 tables. One is main category and the other one is subcategory. In your main category, you have category ID, main category name, okay, main category description, and so on. And then you have a subcategory table. Inside, you have category ID, subcategory name, subcategory description, and also a field that you can relate it to main category. In that field, you basically just store the main category ID of the main category. Right? What do you call that? What do you call that field? Using database term. What do you call that field? In the subcategory, you have a data field that contains the category ID of the main category. What do you call that field? Anybody?
The primary key?
No, the primary key is the category ID of that table. Now we're talking about a data field that contains the category ID from the main category table. So what is that field?
Foreign.
Say it again.
Is it the foreign key?
That's right, foreign key. All right. So start thinking about what you learned from 3050. Okay, very important. All right, Kim. Is that who answered your question?
That was me.
Okay, I can for my. Okay, go ahead. 1 point. Okay. Well, it's actually here. So nobody has to read it. Okay, but if you have a third category, a third level, then you're going to have a main category, subcategory, and then subcategory there, 3 tables. Based on this database theory, it's sound, but it's not practical sometimes. Okay, especially for online applications, you really don't want to mess up with too much kind of SQL commands that you join table and then join another, all right, which will make your processing slow, and also make it more complicated for you to develop your program, your application. So this may not be the best idea, right? Then we'll talk about what? Talk about denormalization. We're going to do it backward. How about storing all categories, including main category, subcategory, or even subcategory, all in one table. Okay, that's actually the best practice. So again, from year 3050, you learn data modeling theory, and also there should be a chapter or at least a section that talk about denormalization, for practicability. So in this case, we are going to do it. We're going to store all levels in one table, and then you have what? You have main category. You have category ID, category name, or category description, and then what? Then you have a data field. You can call it whatever you want. I usually call that parent. So inside that parent, okay, inside that parent, we're going to do something like this. Inside that parent, all right, we're going to store what? We're going to, in the pairing, a pointer column to to indicate the pairing category of each category into the table. All right. So in that case, we're going to store the immediate the main category that subcategory belongs to. Okay. In that case, once we finish the table, now we'll ask that question later. Let's go ahead and develop let's go ahead and develop the table first. Okay. Now I'm going back to Visual Studio. I'm going to create that table. Now, how do you create the database? It is we're not using Microsoft SQL Server, SQL Management Studio. Right? We're using SQL Express inside Visual Studio. Of course, you can still use your any SQL Server instance outside of Visual Studio and create something, and then later on we're going to create a connection to that database, or in development you can go and just create it inside of Visual Studio using something called SQL Express. All right, so how do we create it? You go to project, you go to add new item. Anything that create new, you just have to go to a new item. And there's a SQL Server here, right? Create it. Click it. Okay, and there's a data. Not SQL Server, there's a data category. You click it and say you want to create a SQL Server database. Okay, and give it a name. We're going to call that online store. All right, and then I'm going to create several tables for that online store MDF. Okay. Click add. All right, then you're going to be prompted by this question. You're attempting to add a special file type .mdf. What do you mean by special? Very important data file. Okay, to an ASP.NET website. In general, to use this type of item in your site, you should place it in the application data folder. Do you want to place the file in the application data folder? Now, let me tell you why you ask this question. Now, again, okay, if you develop this database outside of Visual Studio using your regular instance of your SQL Server, then most likely you're going to store that database inside that SQL Server somewhere. Okay. Now, when we are developing this application, we store database inside the app data for a reason. Okay. Later on, once you're done, right, you can upload your project to a server hosted by ISP, and then you can actually use your code to access your SQL database inside this app database. But in the past, a lot of time in the past, when there was no security concern, everybody was just in a hurry to develop web application. They were not security centric. They were not security sensitive. So a lot of time, application developers simply just create a folder called data. and then storing the database inside that folder called data. And then the hacker, hacker was very happy because they know, okay, most likely those application developer will create a folder called data or database to store the data. And then if that folder is not being secured, okay, what do I mean not secure? In your web server, if you don't make a folder, browsing prohibit. And then when you go to that folder, they say abc.com/data, and then without specifying anything, after that backslash, and the server basically will show you all the file name in that folder, and the hacker will take a look at, oh, that one's database, click it and download it. Right? That's crazy, right? So this app data is actually secure for that reason. Okay, it's secure. So we want to store that database in the app data for now. Okay, of course, I would advise you later, once you complete your application development, you want to upload it. It's good that you create, a database and, to work with the regular, SQL servers instance. And in terms of ISP, usually they allow you to execute some SQL scripts, right? And then create a database with their server they're hosting. So you don't have to risk any kind of a risk with uploading, storing your database, even in this app in the data, right? Think about a lot of time the security. The hacker are people from inside a lot of time, not people from outside. So if a person who know how to get access to this server, the web server, and they can simply just go to app data and just get all the data they want. Now, if you have that database secure and managed by the regular SQL server, okay, and that's a lot more secure. All right. So for now, let's just say yes. Okay, we're going to show that the database we create in the app data folder. After that, you're going to see a very simple interface. And these are still working. Oh, it's here, done here, right? Now it's called Online Store MDF, and then you can double click it. All right, then on your left-hand side, you have the Server Explorer. Then they have this MDF, online MDF, and then you can expand your table, category. There's nothing there. This is very similar. Not very similar. Just it's probably like this is scaled down server. So you don't have a lot, like you have, in the regular MS SQL. Okay. So we're going to create a table, right? So what you do is just right-click table and say add new table. Right? You can go to Google, and search for creating a database in Visual Studio. Then you're going to have a bunch of the tutorial. Okay. I believe once we are an IT professional, software engineering, once we get used to this interface, we pretty much can guess how we do it. Okay, so you're gonna come out, you're gonna have something like this. So you can enter data field name here, choose a data type, be it allow null or not allow null, and then start creating your table. So my advice is when I create my tables, I always just leave one data field for the primary key, and I just call that you can call that category ID. Okay, and this is I want it's integer, all right, and allow no. And then when you come to default, I want to make this one as primary key, right? And also, which means I want SQL Server to automatically create numbers when we need it. Every time when we create a new records, we need a number. Okay, so we need to tell SQL Server how to do that. So you right click here, you right click and you go to property. Okay, again one more time, right click and property. You open your property window on the right. All right, and then you will go to identity specification property, and then make this its identity. Yes, double click it. You'll just toggle between false and true. Make it true. So this one will be what will be a data field. The number is given, controlled by SQL Server itself. Okay, and then how do you want to increment it? You can specify the C number, 1,000, whatever, and then how do you want to increment it? This is just 1. All right, so this one become our first data field, and that is also the primary key. Okay, and a lot of time, you also want to have another data field to store somehow, that unique. I mean, somehow is sometimes manually controlled. Prone. It's easy to cause mistake. You want to create data field, okay, and you want to make it unique, and it's manual control. It's very easy to make mistake. But sometimes there's a purpose to have another number, okay, another data field just to specify what this what this category is. So I'm going to call that category, number. Okay? For example, you have category A. You may want to say A001. So every time when you see this A001, you know that is a category A. Okay, without looking into the name of the category or description of the category. And this one, I want to just have it's character 10 or the numeric character. It doesn't matter. Okay, so let's make a numerical character. Allow new, no, nothing allow new. Okay, just make it strict. All right, and then after that, we're going to have a category name. All right, and same here is is category. I mean, his character. That's your name. We want 30. All right, not allow new. You can have a category description. Okay, and character, let's say we have 100. And the last one, well, you can have, in practice, okay, in the real world, you can have a lot of data field, for various purposes. Now, why do have this category description? Because, we want to use that for SEO purpose, because every category, should have, when we go to a category page, inside the meta tag, okay, we want to automatically bring that from database, so we have a different description for different, category pages. So that's the purpose of this category description. All right, and you can have more. All right, so that's let's have the last one. Parent. Remember that parent will store the category ID of the immediate category up. Okay, and so if I say, so what kind of the data type should I create for this parent? A question for you. Hello?
Wouldn't it be character?
No. Remember, the value you store in this parent is actually from another data field in this table.
Would it be integer from the IDs?
That's right, right? It's all from this, the category ID. So it is integer. You gotta, we have to, make sure that, these two fields has the same data field, data type. All right, so this is, data structure. Okay, I just finished. Now, what's next? You click this one, the update. when you click update, basically, SQL Express will create a script internally, all right? And so so this is actually the one here, the script, all right? So before we do that, okay, there's something I forgot. I need to cancel. Now, the script's actually created here. Now, you see here, create table and then table, right? That's not what we want. We want to actually call that category. Now, let's say you forgot, this step. You're going to create a table called table. You can still change it over here, right? So that's probably not, that's not a good practice. So every time when you are done here and you have script, you just want to make sure the script's all right. So let's change the table to category, and then again click this update first. All right, and if there is any error, you're going to show it here. Okay, you can move on. Otherwise, if you see this update database, you just click it. So there are two update, right? Update here is basically updated, the table, and then and the SQL Express will take a look at whether script's okay. If it's good, you're going to see this update database. You click the update database, and then the SQL Express is working until you see a green marker, a green check marker. If you see a red cross, that means something's wrong. Now this is good. All right, that means this table is just being developed. And then what's next is we need to manually enter some data. Okay. Now you can click this. Okay, let me see. You right-click table. You can refresh it, and you should be able to see this category table here. All right. And how do we manually enter data? Right-click and say show table data. Okay. All right. Now let's manually create. Now manually adding data is 100% a bad thing. Now, because we don't have a backend system created already, so we don't have to, to mess up, directly with the database. So we will just, manually enter the data, right? In the real world, you should have a backend data to add a breaker, delete a breaker, update a breaker, or even create a table, or even modify, the table structure. You never want to have anybody, including yourself, to go directly into the table and then enter some data. And you may, make a mistake. Once you make a mistake, what would happen? If you make a mistake in any of the data field in there, what would happen?
Your database will get corrupted. Your database will get corrupted.
Yeah, that's probably just a stream, way of describing the situation. The database get crashed. Okay, that's a good try. 0.5 point, 0.5 point. Okay, for you, credit. Let's look for a better database term. What would what would be heard in terms of database kind of a principle rules? Going once, going twice, called data integrity, right? Integrity, you accidentally change the number, and that data field value happens to be related to some other table, or that data field related to some other record, and you just breaking out database integrity. All right, let's go ahead and do it. Now let's say I am I'm opening a online store to sell computer hardware. Okay. So the target ID is controlled by a SQL Server, so we don't need to do anything. Automatically create you a number 1 to begin with. Category number. Let's say we have 3 main categories: desktop, okay, laptop, and tablet. So desktop, I'm going to call that D. All right, and then 001. So next time when I see this number, I know that is a now we're going to do that with MD is 001. So main category D. That means desktop, okay? And the name here is going to, we'll call that desktop. I'm going to skip this kind of description. There's no time to do that, okay? Just skip it. Oh, yeah, they cannot be null. Okay, so let me just do the same thing. Just typing out so. Parent, okay, what number should we give it here? Okay, this is a commonly used kind of scheme, okay, we're just given 0. If you see, a data field whose parent has a 0, that means what? This is a main category. All right, I'm going to move down to second category, main category, okay. Now it's laptop, so I do an ML001. And I'm going to call this one laptop, and the same thing, laptop, parent 0. All right, the third one is M, tablet, right? So MT 001. I'm gonna call this one tablet. Tablet and 0. Okay. And we should also have subcategory. Okay, we're gonna come back to develop the subcategory later. Let's work on the main category first. Now we have 3 main categories, right? 3 main categories. Later on, we're gonna have. Let me just create one, to just give you a sense of it. Okay. So let's say I'm going to create a subcategory for the first main category, desktop. All right. So category, I'm going to call this one, D, because D means desktop, right? D001. And let's say this one Dell 001, whatever, okay, whatever, just fictitious. And tell me what number should I put in here? 1 point. For people who are paying attention.
Would it be 1?
That's right. Right? It belongs to the first category, and that category ID is 1. You don't want to do this MD001 because that's not the primary key. You want to use this one. This may not be unique because like I said, it's manual enter. Right? So we're going to do the rest of the subcategory later. Okay? So we do have 3. It's a main category. Okay, they all have category ID as a primary key. They have category number, category name, category description, and parent. All right, so let me show you. I already run this default page. So let me show you the pages in the browser. There we go. Now this is the default SPX. We're running directly from Visual Studio, so it has a local host with a port. Now this port number is randomly generated by Visual Studio, or by the SQL. I mean the matrix. Okay, the code name is called matrix. It is the scaled down Visual Studio enabled IIS. All right, so here you can see it now. Like I told you before, I'm going to use this shop here to publish main category. Okay, the template that you bought from thinforest.net, if that template doesn't have something like that drop down, mouse over drop down, and then you can you didn't have to use this this miss 1, 2, 3 for your main category this way. So the coding is going to be different. I have one, one of you, to send me email and show me, a template, and that template actually don't have this drop down. It has something like this, right? So if you need advice, to zoom in, I give you some advice on how you do this if you don't have drop down. So right now is we have a drop down, okay? And mouse over it, you have something like this. We're going to change shop to category or to product, whatever you want to call it. And then we're going to use the existing, the design, which is a what do you call this? This CSS enabled, okay, drop down. It's not JavaScript, it's CSS only, okay. And then just customize, the whatever, the HTML here, and then get the and then go to the category table and publish it. Okay, so you see this one, home, shop, blog, whatever. And this is actually what in the master page, right? Right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. So I hope you guys already finished yours. For some more, I can check it. That is you download your own template and then create your own master. You should have done it by today, okay? And then let's go to the template master page, and let's take a look at where that shop is. Okay, we can actually do a search. Shop. Okay, and we'll go down. Shop. Okay, yeah. We have home, shop, blog, and so on and so forth, right? And shop is here. So what would I do is I would just change the shop to product. This one can be hard coded, right? I just arbitrarily directly change shop to a product. And you take a look at this. Now the CSS enabled pop-up is actually using what? Using LI and UL tag. Okay, so this is actually a great invention by one of the guy, I can't remember the name. When I taught in the CS3110 before. I can't remember his name. The guy invented. Hey, before then, people were using JavaScript to do this, to this mouse over drop down. Eventually, Google doesn't like it. Google really don't want you to see your JavaScript, and so it's making it harder to navigate your site. They advise you just use plain HTML. So somebody invent this LI, UL, and then plus what? Plus this, you see this is a class drop down? That's actually CSS, okay? If you go to CSS, file, you can find out this class and figure out how they do it. It's pretty complicated, but somebody's already done it. And then what it does is, this LI means one entry, all right? So we have this home. See, you have one LI home, and then we have this, used to be shop, and then blog and something else. So every time you have, and above that you have UL, okay? And UL, you have this guy is in control of the first row, like home, shop, blog, and so on. Okay, and then inside this product we have another UL, and this menu class will control what's to be shown. And then every single entry is in an LA tag. So like this. This is the first level, second level. Right? So we don't have to worry about how do we write this. We just use it, and it looks pretty, right? Mouse over, drop down, and then it's all look good. So what we need to do is, okay, here we have 5 hard-coded, right? Entries inside this pop-up window. For our case, we have to get this dynamically from database. So we are going to have what? We're going to have one LI tag, one main category. In other words, this LI tag is hard-coded, A tag hard-coded, href equals, and this double quote, hard-coded. What's inside is going to be, dynamic. And then product here is actually one of the main category name, right? It's dynamic. And then, ending, A tag, ending LA tag, hard-coded. So we have to figure it out, a way that we can actually dynamically create 3 LI with, different, href, different name. That's what we're going to learn, and that's what I'm going to show you, okay? Now, in order to do this, okay, I need to talk about database. There are 2 ways to handle your database. One is using something called, now I'm going to go over here to, I'm going to click this toolbox, okay, on the hand side, toolbox. You see there's this standard category, data category. Everything that you need to do, and all the libraries, functionality you need to do is inside this data category. All the controls, okay. Now, some of the controls, okay, okay, there is one control that's very important. That's called Sql Data Source. Now, this control will let you specify what what type of database do you want to connect to. What is the name of the database. Inside the database, what do you want? What table do you want to what do you want to access? And what data in the database in that table do you want? All the functionality is being being handled by one. This is called server control. Data type kind of server control called Sql Data Source. And once we create it, okay, then what? Then we can just use a lot of data bound control, okay, like data list, data pager, detail view, form view, grid view, and also this repeater, a lot of them. In other words, this Sql Data Source will do the job called connecting to the database. And then once you connect it, okay, and you're able to go to that database or table, grab the data back, and then you can bound. So first we bound this Sql Data Source to database, and then once we have data, we then bound one of the data bound control to this data source. That's the idea, okay? But I need to to show you. So by just talking about it, it's hard for you to understand what I'm talking about. So I'm going to show you what we actually do. Okay. Now, in order for us to create the data source, we're going to do this way. Okay. I'm going to create a dummy ASPX page. Yeah, we can actually create here. We're going to do it here. Okay. We'll just use this template master. Now, I'm going to create a Sql data source. So I click it, drag it, and drop it here. Okay, drop it here. Now, this is only temporary here, right? And then when you go to data in source, go to design, you can actually see that. Can you see it? It's hard to see it, right? The reason I want to see it is because just like when we were creating the currency converter, remember there was a drop-down menu, drop-down list, and when you go to design, and there's a little little button on top right, so you can click it and then you can expand, right, and then go through some kind of wizard to create to specify, to configure that control, and you can see it, right? Can you see it? Hard to see it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that that means what? This is probably not a good way to do that. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna create a dummy ASPX page. So I go over here, I create a new item, then I'm going to go to web. Okay, form. I'm going to create web form without master page, just simple simple web form. I'm going to call that ASPX. So we can have it over here. Okay, now this is here. I add a Sql data source, right? And then if you go to sort design, you can actually see here, right? And you click this little thing. Click it, and you want to configure this data source. All right, so click it. Now we're going to go through this wizard to create this Sql data source. Okay, it's a new connection. Okay, it's a new connection, so we're going to click this. All right, and then we're going to choose the data source. Okay. right? So there's some options here. Access, we're not working on access. We're not doing other, ODBC data sources, other database, ODBC compliant database. And actually, we're not working with SQL Server. Okay, we actually we're working the database we created and store in the update folder. So this is the right one, not even Oracle. So we need to choose Microsoft SQL Server database file, and you're gonna say okay. I think I have one small video recorded just for this part. I look for it and then upload it. Otherwise, you can always go to Google. I know it's hard for you to memorize all the steps, but this is really I want to train you. Get idea, not to memorize those small, those hard kind of steps. So we have this Microsoft SQL Server, right? So first of all, you switch to data source. You want to create a SQL data source. You create a source, and in our case, the database file, and then you're going to look for it. And this database file is is where? It's in this online store, CIS4250F2021, and then inside this double, app data folder, click it and say open. All right, so here I have the little thing I skipped because when we were working on the database, we forgot to release it. So we need to just backtrack. That's okay, we'll backtrack, and we need to go to the database here, right click, and then say detach. All right, and then we're going to come in again, do it again. New connection, choose a source, which is server database file, and then browse, find the location. This one, we're going to say open. All right, good. Use Windows authentication. You know how to tell the difference, right? Okay. You are the one who owns this window, and you're not creating this from the server and for a regular server. So you have authentication there, and we're going to do okay. And SQL Express is working on it. And then from here, when you click this connection string, you can actually see it, okay? But we're not done yet, okay? We're not done yet. And you can also copy it if you want, but but that's not a purpose, if you don't have a use for it, click next, okay? Do you want to save the connection in the application configure in file? That means what? In the web configure file, I will show when I'm done with this. So yes, and then you can give it a name. I will always call that, you can call that connection stream and then call it online store. Ah, I typed it too fast, Can I go back? I can't go back, huh? Shoot. What did I click?
To the left of the next button, it doesn't let you go. There's not a back button. To the left of that one.
I don't see that, back button. Yeah, maybe there's one.
Oh, right there.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, right. Online store. All right, it's online store. So next time when you see connection string, this is connection string, and then the name is after, like that. Okay. Next, here you can actually write, for this, SQL data source, you can actually write a default, SQL Server for, statement for it, but we don't have to. So we just, go next, and you can text query to see whether, right now you get everything out. Okay. In this case, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And actually what we need for this main category is just 0, 0, 0 here, right? So at least we'll make sure, it's connected, and we just click finish. Right? After it's done, if you go to source, right, you're going to see, right, now, SQL data source, and then, you have this connection string and column connection string online store. Now this is a parameter, and by default we have this select everything from category. Okay, now this is only what? This is only the temporary working. Now once you do this, okay, if you go to your web configure file, you'll see, this is actually XML file. Under the configuration node, this is the top node, and you have connections, system.web, system codom, and so on and so forth. And you do have this connection string at the very beginning. I forgot to show you before I create this connection string. Before we don't have this. Once we create it, and Visual Studio automatically add this connection string node to this web configure file, and then the name. This is the name we create, and this is the actual connection string. You know that, right? ODB's connection string is very strict. You cannot change anything. Once you change a word, a character, nothing works. Okay. Now, what's the purpose of saving the connection string here? Because this a web configure file is a file that contains all the important parameters, measures in order for the Visual Studio or ASP.NET runtime to run this application. And another purpose is, if this is shareable, why not store here? Okay. So instead of storing this data source, this connection string, in the individual pages. So once we have this, from this point on, we just use it. Okay. So this temporary ASP, they're just a way for us to create it. They're all different types of ways of creating to create a connection string. Okay. Now this is probably the easiest way to do it. All right, so later on I will zip this file again, this project again below it so you can see it. Okay, so now I have a data source, right? So now I'm going to copy some code instead of just typing everything. Okay, so give me just 2 seconds so I can copy something and paste it. Okay. All right, I have it here. All right, so let me go back to Visual Studio. Okay, now, and also inside this template master, remember this place. So I'm going to paste the code I just copied from my previous work. Okay, now you see here we have a Sql Data Source. Okay, now this one is not the one who created this one. This is the one inside this page. Now the one I create here is just with the purpose to create a connection string for everybody else to share. Now this Sql Data Source is just created here to be used to create to get the main category from the category table. So give it a name, Sql Data Source DS main category. Okay. Now this is my naming convention. I've been using this way. I think from my point of view, it's probably the best. I usually just SQL Data Source. Right? It's very easy to see. And then there is a runout server, and there is a command parameter called connection string. Same thing. You do connection string and then the name of connection string. Right? And then select command. Here, okay, our purpose is what? Is to get all the main category. Right? So what we do is select everything from category where pairing equals 0. Right? This is the way to get all the main category. So this can be, hard coded here. Why? Because every time when you create a page, inside the page, under that product, menu, you mouse over it, we should already have the main category. So this is, this doesn't change. Every page is the same. So we don't need to write this SQL server, SQL statement and the code behind anywhere else. Just hard code it here. So in other words, the SQL server, you can add these, the two things very important. One is what is connection string, right? This connection string, if we take a look at the connection string one more time, here, you have what you have, the type, and also the ODBC driver, and then the actual name of the database and some of the thing. Right. All right, so this is a SQL data source. We're done. Once the ASP done in runtime, run this. We have what? We have the data. We have the three main category, records inside the SQL data source. Okay. Now, how does this SQL data source, store that, data? It is called data container. Now, we don't need to get into it right now. Okay. Later on, we will talk about it. Okay. So it's inside, the SQL data source. Then we need what? We need to use a data bound control. In this case, repeater. Okay. It's data bound control. All right. And then bound this data bound control to this SQL data source. And once you buy this data, the data bound control to the data source, and then this data bound control has access to the data that we retrieve, from this data string, from this connection string, and also this SQL statement. In this case, three main categories. Okay, I call that RP, repeater, main category, run that server. And then here's very important. Which data source do you want to bind it to? And that's going to be this data source name. So this two has to be the same. Okay. Now, the syntax for repeater. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the development guy. Where's my development guy? Here. You see the development guy here? Okay. There's a place. Oh, repeater. Oh, here. Okay. Okay. I have step by step here, but this is not, a very high level, pseudo kind of step by step. It's not every single step. That's going to take you like 3 pages. So this gives you a high level kind of step by step. And here, the data, the repeater web control. If you control click, you can actually go to this. Let me do this. Okay, let me just go to copy hyperlink. All right, then I will go to the browser, and then here. Now, this website is very common. Okay, I use this site a lot. They have a ASP.NET reference. Now the repeater controls here. Right? You can also go back to Microsoft website, and they have a bunch of documentation website, but sometimes it's just hard to read. This one's give you very simple. If you move down to here, it give you the basic structure of it. Here, the basic structure is here. Okay, you have repeater, and then inside repeater tag, ending repeater tag. Inside you have 3 sections. One is header, an item, and also footer. So you can actually use this repeater and just enter some HTML inside and create a table if you want. But this one doesn't. A lot of the data bound control will create you table automatically, but not this one. So for our purpose, we just want to have 3 entries, main category in there into the existing design, HTML design. So we don't need to create table. And we don't need this in header. We don't need the footer. All we need is just what? Just item template. Now, item template is something that you repeat. Now, this one called repeater, right? This is what you repeat. All right. So let me go back to Visual Studio. Now, so inside this item template tag is what you repeat. And what we're going to repeat? We're going to repeat, this, right? And let me delete this one for now because I don't have time to explain it this today. I'll do it next time. Okay, you see, now we want to repeat this, and this part is dynamic, this part is dynamic, right? So now this piece we're going to work in next time. Now this is where we are going to publish the category name. And the syntax is percentage sign, pound sign, and then evaluate what's in this category name. Now, this is actually one of the field in this SQL data source data container. Inside, remember here, we do what we select everything from category, unless you do like select, only category name. You can also do it like this, because we only need this in the category. Okay, but we select everything. Oh. We select everything, from, the category table, the parent equals 0. So the way you get that, the value from one of the data field, it just put that data field name here and then eval. Okay, now after that, we don't need this. Right? We don't need this anymore. Right? We don't need it. In other words, when ASP.NET, runtime run from top, when it gets to here, oh, I see, there's ASP.NET server control, SQL Data Source, and ASP.NET will run this one. And when it run this one, it'll go to see, oh, your connection is actually this. It'll go to web configure file, and then take a look at it, and then build, and then start to build, the connection. And once you have a connection, you actually have to know what data you want, right? Then you take a look at the select command, and this is what we want. And when it's done, the 3 main category entries are in the data in the data container, controlled by this SQL Data Source. And then ASP.NET runtime continue running, top down, left to right. And when it sees this another data bound control, another web control, in this case it's data bound control called repeater. Okay, then the ASP.NET runtime will take a look. Oh, hey, which data source you actually bound to? Oh, it's SQL main category, which is here. Okay, in that case, the repeater has the 3 records, and then start using it. How does it use it? In the item template, we repeat. Okay, repeat is 3 li, and every time when you see a tag like this, percentage tag is still run by server, and we're going to evaluate each time when you have a record, get that category name, and then and publish to this one, and move to the next record, publish the second one, and then move the third record for the third one. Eventually, we have 3 entries. Now I'm going to save it and run it. Okay, and run it. Let me see if I can just. I already have that. Since we still have we have this, so we just refresh and see whether it just carry on. Looks like it is carrying on, otherwise it won't take that long. So we don't have to run it in a different browser. All right, see here, you mouse over it. Yep. Oh, we don't have 1. Yeah, apparently we have some. Let's go back. Let's go back. There's some typo. All right, I'm short of 1. The closing quote for that HIF. That just HTML. Every time we have something wrong, you are not going to have the right thing. Everything else after that will all get checked. All right, so let's go back to the browser. There we go. See that, right? Product, 3 main category. We didn't change the original design. It's all here. But this is actually from database. Right? Whew. Okay, now, any questions? I have to leave. I'm have to leave. To have like the last 2 minutes to do it, to take a roll. Okay. Any questions? Again, okay. You need to create data source, SQL data source, so you can have that data connection string stored in the web configure file. Once you have it, you can use it. Then we come to the webmaster file. The master master file, and figure out where that we want to publish the main category. Once we find the right place, we analyze it and figure out what we need to, repeat. And then we have this, SQL Data Source code, and server there, web control there, and also the repeater there. You can just copy my code. Okay. So for your own, online store, okay, once you have this main, this master page done, you go in there and find a place that you can publish, your main category, and do the same thing. Okay, in this case, you don't really need to write your own code. Just copy my, data source and also the repeater, and just configure the property and make it work. That's what you need to do. And Wednesday, I'm going to show you how we publish the subcategory. In that case, we're going to create a new page called category.aspx page, because the main category is always in the master page. Once you click one of them, we should go to the category page and show the category on the left-hand side. Okay, and pretty much we're going to use the same technique, the SQL Data Source. And at some point in time, we're going to learn how to write our own database code. We don't always just want to use a SQL Data Source. That is more like high-level, easy use kind of library, or what do you want to call it. Okay, but a lot of time we do have to write our own database code. Okay, we'll get there. Any questions? Again, I want to remind you, okay, you have to catch up. Okay, every time when you go home, do it. Otherwise, you're going to forget. Okay. All right, now you can still think about what question you have, but I'm going to bring out my roster so I can